Hello and welcome back to the Ambitious Podcast. Today we are talking about burnout. And this is something that I think so many people, whether they know it or not, have probably experienced at some point in time, some stage, which we're going to be getting into today, the different stages of burnout. You probably have experienced this at some of the stages, if not all of the stages. If that's happened, it's happened to me as well. I've gone through many of the different stages of burnout, and burnout is something that I see with so many business owners, and I see the signs of burnout. I see the impacts of burnout. And this is why I feel like it's something that we need to talk about, because so many of us women who are going for these really big goals, right? Like we really want to excel in our business. We want to excel in our personal lives, in our relationships, in our health. And we feel like we have like these very big goals for what feels like every section of our life. What we have to realize is that takes a lot of energy, that takes a lot of capacity from us in order to achieve those things. And I think something we need to be careful of is kind of maintaining harmony and getting there. You know, something that I hear a lot of people talk about is like, how do I achieve balance? How do I have balance? And I heard this from someone else's podcast and it just like light bulbed for me. And it was this discussion around, instead of us going for balance, instead of us going for this idea of we're perfectly equal, in the sense of like balance, you think about literally this as like almost like a flat surface, right? Like both sides are perfectly in line. And I think that for many people naturally feels like something that's not achievable, because let's face it, life doesn't work like that. Some weeks everything's going to be going great with your kids. And then the next week it's like, what is going on this week? You feel like you can't get a hold of anything. Or one week you feel like the business is in flow and like there's no fires. And then the next week you feel like everything needs your attention. And so I think the thing that helped me was this word of harmony. And this is something that I have, I'm going to be talking a little bit about my own burnout journey and also stages of burnout, signs of burnout, how to come back from burnout. Like we're really going to get into this deep today, because this is something that I personally have found is better suited with the word harmony. And harmony helps me because it helps me to really look at the fact that it's not always going to be equal. It's not always going to be perfectly balanced, but we're looking to create, I almost think about it, the analogy that I gave, and you guys, if you know me, you know I'm pro therapy. The analogy that I gave my therapist was, I think about harmony. If you had an orchestra and you have certain parts of the music where certain, the trumpets are louder or the drums are louder, but it accentuates, it still feels like a song you want to listen to, right? That's something that I'm like, okay, that is harmony, means that all of these instruments are working in unison together to give us that perfect song that we're looking to hear. And that's ultimately like our perfect week, our perfect month, our perfect year. So as long as it's in harmony, we still like the sound that it's producing. Whereas when you think about balance and everything is equal, and if you think about all these instruments playing at the exact same note, well, that actually might not be perfect for us. That might actually not be, the ideal. And I think that there's so many times in life where we're not in control. There's certain things we do have control of, and there's things that we don't. And I think with the word balance, it's difficult because then you feel like when something else comes in and you don't have control over that thing, you take the brunt of that and you say, oh, I've messed up my balance. Even though the reality is there's things in life, in your schedule, in your family, in your relationships that are just going to come up that you simply cannot control. So I really want to move forward, instead of balance being this word that we're constantly talking about, let's talk about harmony. Let's talk about trying to get everything just simply to work together for the overall tone and goal of what we're going for. So to kick off today, I often will have clients even asking me, have you ever experienced burnout? And I'm like, yeah. Like I will tell you, and I'm not going to lie to you, I feel like this is still something that I'm mastering, because I've had many different, burnout experiences. I would say I've had about 3 major burnout experiences. And this is the classic case of life is going to teach you a lesson until you learn it and until you absorb it and change your behavior. And I think the first 2 times I was kind of like, oh, haha, like I just was like in a stressful period. So, anyway, and moved on, right? I thought it was just like an episode that I was having, and I was like, on to the next, like, let's just work our way through this. And, the first time that I was really, really burnt out, I remember everything was fine. I was just really sick. I felt really, really sick. I was super nauseous. And totally TMI, but I was extremely like, I literally couldn't keep water down. I couldn't keep food down. And I remember like I was shaking and like my body was just like I was physically ill. And I remember my family being really concerned, being like, okay, like what is going on here? Because I couldn't eat, I was losing weight and I felt awful. So I would go to the doctors and they'd say, listen, all your tests are coming back, as they should. We're not seeing anything alarming here. Anyway, we go through all this testing and testing. And it got to such a point that obviously I couldn't keep water down. So I was getting very, very weak. I could barely walk, to be honest with you, because my body was so weak at this point. And I went to the hospital and I was begging the doctor. I was like, please do not let me leave here. I don't know what's wrong with me. I cannot function. And this was like very, very early on. And I remember I could not function. And they had given me medication that they give their clients who were going through cancer treatments to help them with the nausea that they get when they're going through cancer treatments. They were giving me that for my nausea. So when people are going through chemo and they're really nauseous, they were giving me the same medication that they give to people who were going through chemo. And I was still nauseous. So of course they're giving me what they're telling me is like the highest level of anti-nausea that they've got. And they're like, hey, like that's it. If that's not working, then we got to figure out what this is. And all of this comes to a T, and they end up giving me like a sedative. So it was kind of like a very strong anti-anxiety. And let's keep in mind, until this point, I had had weeks of shaking, stomach's upset, all of these different things. And I take this anti-nausea and all the symptoms go away. Everything's gone. And I was like, okay, this is terrifying. And then of course, in talking to the doctor, they said, okay, so it's stress. And I was like, stress doesn't make your body like this. And that was the first aha for me, which was, wait a second, stress can have that impact on my body? He's like, absolutely. Your body will scream at you until you listen. And that for me was the first like, whoa, interesting. So for me, I ended up getting very scared because I didn't want to feel like that again. I didn't want to feel like I wasn't in control and that my body was taking over. So fast forward a couple years, I had another scenario where I felt like I, again, had this experience. I was conscious of it, but to say that I actually massively altered my behavior, no. Again, life will teach you lessons until you learn. So fast forward, I had another scenario where I was just feeling really irritable. I was feeling like everything would annoy me. Everything would set me off. I felt like I was like the tiniest little thing would activate me. And I was like, it didn't take much to like get me going, I guess is what I would say. And I'm not usually like that. I'm not usually like a spicy person, I wouldn't say, like on an average Monday to Friday, right? And so for me and the people around me, it was really difficult because I was constantly just kind of irritated and I couldn't figure out why. It wasn't due to any specific scenario. It wasn't, due to anything. And now looking back on it, I was very burnt out at that time. I've been pushing so hard to go to seven figures at that time. And I really, like, honestly, seven figures took over my identity. It took over my brain. Like I genuinely couldn't see anything else other than this goal. And I talk about this a lot with my clients because I will say, like, when you're focused on a goal, you need to be very conscious of the compromises that you're making. And it's not to say that when you're going for big goals, you're not going to have compromises. But I think when you're doing so, you need to be intentional. You need to know that, hey, I'm consciously deciding I'm not going to the gym today. I'm consciously just like, you're doing it out of intention. And then you have to actually check in with yourself in that moment and say, like, is that what I value? Is that what I want? And I think at that time I wasn't. I was just making decisions off the cuff very quick. And that led me down this very quick cycle of burnout because I was making decisions super, super quickly. And one thing dominoed after another, and all my life became work. And I'm open about this because I do feel that I got to seven figures as quickly as I did. I got to seven figures in 18 months of starting my online business. And I don't recommend to people for them to do it the way that I did it. A lot of what I teach my clients is actually like, here's what I would have done, and it still would have been just as effective, and that I've mastered today. So like this, I can learn from being on the other side of this, again, talking from scars, not wounds. I really try to tell people like, hey, like I have experience in this. I've gone through this. I want to give you the insight that I have and pass this along to you. So at the second time, I was just super irritable. I really started to just find that I wanted the business to grow, but I was also kind of resentful in a way. Like I was annoyed because it was taking so much from me. but I also refused to acknowledge the fact that I was the one who was creating these self-imposed expectations of hitting certain income targets or growth targets or social targets or sales targets or whatever. And again, I was like, oh, I'm fine. I took, I think at that time, like a week off kind of thing. And I left it at that. And looking back, I was not taking care of my health. Like I wasn't taking care of my nutrition. I wasn't taking care of being conscious of my sleep, my exercise, like all the classic things that we need to be doing to be holistic humans. I was just ignoring. And so then, at that time comes the third time that I experienced this. And the third time, I almost think about this as like, there was like a couple little breaks along the way with these little instances. And then there was this third mecca, complete shattering of the glass, if you will. There's little cracks in the glass until then. And I felt it a little bit, but it wasn't necessarily something that was the big kaboom. And then there was the third. And the third was just really this overwhelming experience. And, during this time, so every single year around Christmas time, we take a couple weeks off. This time for me usually is a complete reset. There's no client communication. There's no working on the business. There is no marketing. Like everything entirely shuts down. And it was literally like the day that my break started was the day my breakdown started. That was genuinely the timeline. It was a matter of business closes on Friday. Saturday, it was like my body became unglued. And I physically, mentally, emotionally just became distraught. Again, like symptoms here being that I started to get super, super emotional, couldn't figure out why. I was crying for hours on end about nothing event-wise necessarily that had even happened. At this time had checked in and kind of looked at the fact that like my digestion was awful, like totally TMI, but like I literally wouldn't go to the washroom for like 7 days at a time. And my body was just like seizing and my digestion was crap. I was gaining weight. I was having acne that I have never had before. And again, like gaining weight, having acne is not a big deal. Like I've had all of that in my life and I don't think it means anything. It's more a matter of the reason I'm mentioning this is because I think sometimes in certain situations at extremes, our body can be trying to tell us something. And I think that I, again, was not listening. So at this point, physically, acne, weight gain, bloating, digestion awful, stomach constantly in pain, headaches, migraines, you name it. Emotionally, so irritable, crying and just completely distraught. The next moment, totally fine. In a matter of hours, I would go from totally irritated and just like kind of like, I don't want to speak to anybody to, hey, do you want to meet for coffee? Let's go for dinner. And people around me were like, what the hell is going on with Kate? Because I was so up and down all of the time. And, at this point, I had been feeling stressed for months, but I'm going to be honest with you, I kept making these excuses of, oh, it's just the business needs this from me. The business needs me to perform in this way. And let's be honest, I'm obviously on the other side of all of this now, but at that time, it felt that was the case. It felt that I had to outwork myself out of this problem that I was in or out of this stage that I was in, that if I just worked a little more, if I just, put my head down and push through this phase, that we'd get to this next target that I had in my mind. And it was all built on just such a flawed belief system. And so at this moment, this was the worst Christmas break that I had ever had because it felt so dark. It felt like, I feel like I'm going to get emotional. It really felt like there was no light. Like it really felt like there was the point where I thought, I'm done. Like I literally, I got to a place where I just thought like, maybe this business is not for me. Maybe this life is not for me. I debated on refunding all my clients. I debated, like, I was so close, you guys. I was so close. And, it was just a time that I, now coming after it, I'm so happy that I'm on the other side, because at that time it was fog. I couldn't see a way out. I couldn't see any alternative other than what I had been feeling and what I had known to be business until that point. And, being able to go through this experience, that's why I want to talk about this, because I think that I had to go through a lot of testing. I had to really invest into my health, invest into my mental health, invest into therapy, invest into coaching. And we're going to unpack all that today, but this is something that is so near and dear to my heart that I now, having gone through it, want to help to make sure that no one else experiences this. And it is possible to prevent. And so I want to just say that if you are someone who feels that you have been experiencing burnout in the past, maybe you're even experiencing it right now, and you feel like I am just feeling pulled in a million different directions here. These things happen. These things are common as entrepreneurs. We get thrown into this tornado of entrepreneurship. And if this is something that's fairly new to us in the last couple of years, you have to learn to behave as a different person. You need to learn how to have a different lifestyle. And so, for me, I think that the reason that it's important to master this is because, we're put into this tornado of entrepreneurship. And I think the difficult piece is that we don't get a roadmap. We don't have this roadmap of exactly what it is that we're supposed to be doing in what specific order to take care of ourselves and take care of the business. And especially for you who are going for these big goals, you have big things you want to accomplish. You have massive things that maybe people around you don't seem to understand. And as a result, you don't have an indication of what the right way to do that is while achieving harmony. And so that's what I want to talk about today. So before we go into the different breakdowns of burnout, guys, when I say that I literally have like a small seminar on burnout today, that's what we're getting. We're going deep into it, both science and emotional side. So I want to break down the 5 different stages of burnout that I have noted here, because this is something I think is really important for people to understand. And you may even see some signs for yourself of like, oh, that's me right now. And this is a good indication. It's something that you can check in on and come back to and say, okay, this tells me that I'm kind of going down a path here and I need to recenter. So stage 1 is the honeymoon phase. And the honeymoon phase is, where you have lots of optimism, you're having high energy levels in your job and in your business. You have high productivity, you're very free flowing with your creativity. You really feel like you want to prove yourself and you're very committed to this business. So again, many of us all been through that honeymoon phase where we're like, oh, online business, let's freaking go. We're so excited. And, we're very much just like the world is our oyster. Let's go get it. Now, stage 2 is the onset of stress. So you start to feel like you can't focus. You start to feel a little bit irritated. Maybe you're feeling like once in a while your sleep is being reduced. Your sleep's not been amazing. You find that you're kind of getting a little bit more exhausted with social interactions. Feel like anxiety is happening from time to time. Maybe you're having a change in appetite, either more appetite or no appetite. Starting to kind of let your personal needs fall to the wayside. So, the self-care time, that walk you typically do, you're like, oh, okay, I'm just going to skip that this week. And you find little things are starting to fall off like that. And also, you're avoiding making decisions. You're finding that you're constantly knowing you need to make a decision about something, but avoid doing it entirely. So again, stage 2 is the onset of stress. Now, stage 3 is chronic stress. This is where you constantly have this persistent tiredness. You're constantly feeling that you're procrastinating. You almost are kind of a little bit resentful and you're experiencing social withdrawal. People are asking you to go out and you're like, no, I can't even imagine the energy to go do that right now. I'm not interested. You also can find yourself almost being like aggressive in your response to things and then looking back afterwards and being like, oops, and seeing how you replied in the moment just out of sheer emotion. You feel this kind of overlining like constant sheer exhaustion. You can also have a decrease in sexual desire. So you typically may have a very good libido and then during this time feel like I'm not interested and retreat. And you often will have a denial of problems, which was me, denial of problems, and you constantly feel pressured. And sometimes as a result of these different symptoms, we'll sometimes use things like alcohol, too many glasses of wine to kind of help you to unwind after a day. And you find that this is not just like a one-off. This is a pattern that you need in order to get through to the next day. And again, can be alcohol, can be drugs, either or. So now going into stage 4, burnout, full burnout. So this is where you're constantly focused on problems. You feel like all you see in your environment is problems. You're very much a negative outlook on the world. You feel like everything around you, there's only issues, there's only resistance, there's only things not working. And that's that, case in point. You physically are starting to feel symptoms. You're physically starting to feel a little bit sick, off, something's amiss. You have self-doubt in yourself. Like, is this meant for me? Should I be doing this? Again, as I told you guys, that stage that I got to was like, am I an entrepreneur? Like, should I be doing this? Should I just go back and get a 9-to-5 job? Like, that's literally the stage of burnout that I got to. All of what I'm talking about here is the more or less final stage of burnout that I had reached. And it was the physical signs. It was constantly focusing on problems. As I said, chronic GI problems, as I was talking about, like totally TMI, like can't poop, you got something wrong with your digestion, right? And all of this is literally tied from scientific testing to burnout. So these are not just things that we want to shove away and say like, oh, I'm just having some, must be the dairy, right? Like, it's like, no, this is something you need to listen to your body. Other things that you'll see here as well is, again, neglect of personal needs, social isolation. There were times that I was like so focused on my business that I wouldn't even realize that I hadn't left my house for a couple of days. And I'm like, because everything's here. I have like my gym here, my podcast here, my office here, like everything was here. So I would have like 3 or 4 days that I would be like, wait a second, I haven't left the house because I've had everything that I needed here. And chronic headaches and constantly doing activities that help you to escape. So like, even though you know you need to do something, you're trying to find different things that you can do that help you to avoid the thing you actually have to do. And you're seeing your behavior actually start to change. So stage 5 is habitual burnout. And that's really where you have this ongoing chronic symptom that's coming up for you. So that is chronic sadness, chronic mental fatigue, chronic physical fatigue, and chronic depression. And this is honestly, habitual burnout is literally burnout that persists, that is not handled, and ultimately starts to compound into an ongoing feeling that does not go away. So again, just to reiterate the different stages: stage 1, honeymoon phase; stage 2, onset of stress; stage 3, your chronic stress phase; stage 4, burnout is here; and stage 5, habitual burnout. So I just really wanted to cover those for you because there may be things in there that you go, oh, I'm stage 2 or I'm stage 1 or whatever it might be. And again, this is an awareness. It's that classic line of like, you can't change a problem until, you acknowledge it, right? First step to changing is acknowledging that you even have a problem. And I believe that to be true. And I think it's difficult because sometimes in business, it's hard for us to see our own blind spots. It's hard for us to see the areas that we're not addressing or the areas we're amiss. And so I think that's why I wanted to talk about different signs, symptoms today, because I want this to be your checklist to say, where am I at? Let's check in with you right now. How are we doing, right? Which stage are we at? Are there symptoms that I'm saying that kind of are alarming or setting off some alarms for you? And hey, today is also a time where we're going to be talking about how you bounce back and how I bounced back. And I want this to be something, if you have this awareness, that you can also take that and go do something with it today and make a change moving forward. So let's go a little bit into the actual signs of burnout. Like, how do we know that that we are burnt out? What are some signs that we need to be aware of? First things first, physical and emotional exhaustion. So you're going to really, like for me, it would be that I would sleep and I would wake up and I would still feel tired. It didn't matter how many hours of sleep that I got. I would sleep for 10 hours and I would still wake up and I would feel tired, or I would feel this constant state of overwhelm and just drain all the time. It felt like a weight on me. It was like just so heavy. Another one as well is decreased performance and productivity. Like, I was finding myself, no word of a lie, needing to like sit and write a caption or sit and do honestly anything. An email felt at times like this was like writing an essay. It was so difficult for me. And I could not for the life of me figure out why. And again, I'm very productive. I'm somebody who is very much like a get shit done mindset. If I'm focused on something, I usually am very great at it. But then to go through this and feel like I'm trying to write an email, why is it taking me 2 hours to write an email, was very frustrating. So also cognitive difficulties. This is one that I didn't anticipate or that I wasn't as aware of until people started to bring it to my attention. People would say things to me and then I wouldn't remember. They'd be like, oh, remember last week when I told you? I'm like, oh no. And I would ask them questions to say, oh, so like, what are you doing? I'm like, I fully told you that I'm doing this. And I'm like, oh, really? And I would have no recollection of things people were saying to me. So one thing that I will say is struggle with memory or struggle with attention is also something that you can investigate further to say, is this actually just a sign of burnout, or is there something else even going on? A negative attitude and cynicism. Bless the hearts of people who had to deal with me at this phase, because again, at the time I didn't know it was burnout. I was just like, maybe I'm just becoming bitter as I get older. I don't know. I had a phase where I was just like, really, I couldn't see positive. I didn't really enjoy the laughs as much. It was not always sunshine and rainbows to me. I don't remember the scientific term, but it's essentially where your brain, if you have something in your subconscious that your brain is looking for, it's going to help you to find that. So if you're someone who's looking at buying a red car, you're going to see red cars everywhere. If you're someone who wants to find negative, you're going to find a lot of negative in the world. Now, being on the other side of things now, if I want to see all the positive in the world, I see a lot of positive. I see the birds chirping and I feel the sun on my face, and like, I can see that. That was still there before. It's just that my mind was totally like, nope, the world is negative. The world is problems. And that was just because the mindset I was in due to burnout. Lack of motivation. things that you once enjoyed ultimately now become a burden. Like one of the things that I really enjoy that I've always found kind of like soothing and like therapeutic for me has been baking, which I know is weird, but I'm not like someone who cooks. I'm awful at cooking, but baking, I was someone who really enjoyed baking. And at a certain point I was like, no, put it away. I don't want to do it. Or, even like for me, you guys know me, I get ready every day. It's like my little ritual. And for me to like not wear makeup and stuff was kind of bizarre because I'm very much someone who really enjoys taking care of my physical appearance. So to not take care of my physical self was kind of like, okay, that's concerning. And again, physical symptoms, things like headaches, stomach aches, muscle tension, sleep disturbance, or you have frequent illness in the sense of like you're constantly getting the cold, the flu. That means your immune system is compromised. It means that your body is in a state of stress that it's not able to heal itself fully. Therefore, you're further compromised to getting sick again. Emotional instability, you're feeling mood swings, you're irritable, or you have just a sense of hopelessness. Like I was saying, when I hit my peak of burnout, it was really dark. Like I just thought, I can only describe it as it was like, and this is how I describe it to people in my life. It was like at the time I was in a room and someone turned the lights off. Like that's genuinely how it felt. It felt like I was in a room. It was foggy. I could not see out. It was dark. And I was like, here we are. Right. And that's genuinely how it felt. It just felt like someone flicked a switch and they were like, nope. And this is the dark state that you're in now. And neglecting self-care. So like you found a change in healthy eating, in exercise, and you find it really difficult to prioritize your well-being. Again, also me, like it's just all of these are things that I was experiencing. So I know for a fact of how these present, of how they show up. And interpersonal conflicts, difficulties in relationships. This is something that, again, it's difficult for me to talk about without getting emotional because I think it's really unfortunate, but my lack of ability to manage this constant cycle of burnout that I had during these phases, it did take a toll on my relationships. It took a toll on my friendships, on my romantic relationship, family relationships. I empathize because I don't judge anybody for like, I lost people in my circle during that time. And I get it. Like I get it now. And I understand why people need to do what they need to do to preserve their own boundaries and their own mental health. But when you're around someone who is so negative, when you're around somebody who feels like all they see is problems, who you feel like is kind of just on this cycle that you can tell is all self-inflicted due to stress, due to work, and you're trying to tell them and them, i.e. me, won't listen, it takes a toll, right? If you feel like you're trying to help this person and you're trying to be supportive and they, myself or you, are not listening, it's not someone else's job to get you over that finish line. It's not someone else's job to help you to see the light necessarily. And so it is difficult because I lost some really, important, this is why burnout makes me so emotional because I know the impacts of it. And I lost some really great people. I lost some really great people in my life because of how I handled that phase of my life. And it is sad. And it's like the domino effect of feeling this way. So I would say this is why it's really important to get the help that you need because it's not someone else's responsibility to help get you through that time. And if it's something that is a small phase, that's one thing. But if you constantly get these signs and do not address it, that takes a toll on the relationships around you, regardless of the dynamic. Friends, as I said, romantic relationships, friend relationships, your partner, whatever it might be. Like there's so many different ways that this can kind of seep into your life. And again, it has an impact on the people around you. So you're listening and you think, okay, some of these resonate with me. I want to be aware of this moving forward. I want to know how to move forward. What are the best steps to move forward? I want to talk to you about some of the things that I did to bounce back. And I want to categorize these in 3 different areas for you, which are the internal, the external, and the daily habit. And what I mean by that is you've got internal, which I want you to think about as your conscious, your subconscious, your mind work, your mental health work, okay? Like your beliefs, your values, right? All of the inside work that needs to be done. External, you also need to take care of your physical state. So you need to be doing things like movement, healthy eating, sleep, all of the physical things that you need to physically let your body recharge. And then also daily habits, which is the maintenance of these internal and external pieces of work that you've been doing to heal. So for me, I very much tried to categorize my healing into 3 categories, and I still maintain these 3 categories today, which are the internal, the external, and then the daily habits, because all of these kind of work in harmony together. So first things first, therapy. I'm someone who's been going to therapy. I'm very much pro therapy. I think that everyone, to be honest, regardless of who you are, should be in therapy. Not because I think there's this misconception. Therapy is like, oh, something's wrong with me, I need to go talk to somebody about it. Therapy to me is simply getting a non-emotional third party who does not have any preconceived ideas about you or your life or any of those things, and gives you an honest third party opinion of what they see in you or what they see as patterns in you. They identify your blind spots, and they're non-emotional. And the reason I keep saying non-emotional is because sometimes when we go to get insight, we go to our parents or we go to people who know us, we go to our friends, right? And therapists don't have all of that emotional connection. To them, it is simply a matter of, let us unpack the facts and let's present this in a new lens, right? So therapy for me, a couple of things that really helped me. I worked with my therapist to really talk about how I was making decisions at that time when I was the most burnt out. And I was making decisions from a flawed belief system. So that was kind of the slogan that I want to pass along to you is burnout is a byproduct of making decisions from a flawed belief system. So what does that mean? You every day should be making decisions based off of your values, not how you feel. When you wake up, you're going to feel certain things. I feel tired today. I feel like I don't want to eat healthy today. I feel like I don't feel like moving today, right? You feel. Well, what do we know about feelings? We know for a fact that feelings are fluid and that feelings go up and they go down and they can change so quickly in a couple minutes, in a half an hour, in an hour, right? Your emotions can change. And so the thing is, when you tie your behavior to your emotions, you're going to see your results or your life be a byproduct of that fluidity of feelings, right? Because if you're constantly making decisions up and down based off of feelings, your life and your outcome and your reality is going to be up and down. So one of the things that I do now, I do this with my clients as well, because again, I really want to help people to not only come back from burnout, but also to prevent burnout as well, is looking at making your decisions in your life from a value system. So what do I mean by this? For example, one of my values is harmony. Do I have harmony in the things that I care about? For example, values, another one for me would be boundaries, like taking care of myself first, then others. And so what this does is it ends up being this kind of internal, I want you to think about this as almost like an internal commandments. Like you're going to have this internal system that you'll use to check in to say, okay, how am I doing? Right? How am I doing with the things that I care about? How am I doing with what I prioritize, what I know to be true? And you're going to actually take that and look at your week every week and say, how did I do to make decisions based off my values? For example, I don't feel like going and working out or going to the gym or going to do something movement wise. Well, I could say, well, that's based off how I feel, but what do I value? I value taking care of my health. And I value making sure that I move my body in some way every single day. So for me, I'm like, I don't feel like going to the gym, go for a walk. I don't feel like going for a walk, go do yoga. Don't feel like doing yoga, go take another class, right? Like go do something, go ride your bike, go do a boxing class, do an online, whatever. Do some kind of program, do something to just move your body because that's what you value. You value moving your body in some way, shape, or form every day. You don't necessarily have to value, I go to the gym every day and I crush my PR. It's more a matter of, okay, great. What do I actually value? And then checking in with yourself and saying, even for you, what do you actually value? What are the things that matter to you? What are the things that you hold to be true in your life? And taking some intentional time to sit back and take time to outline these things. Take time to get clarity, because the other thing I know is this clarity is not just going to happen because you listen to this episode and all of a sudden you're like, great, okay, got it. And then it just sits and nothing happens with it. Take the spark, take the awareness, and take that and actually make that into something. Make that into a plan for yourself. So I look now every single week at my calendar and I say, how do I make decisions from values? So did I work out? Did I move my body every day? Did I have 2 different relationships that I had like checked in with. So checking in with a friend, checking in with family, right? Like having in-person things or in-person time. How did I sleep? Did I, prioritize my sleep and tell myself that I prioritize rest and making sure that that's also a value that I'm seeing, right? So look at the things that you value and what you hold to be true, and look at your system and say, okay, how much am I implementing that? Also, something that I had to really get over was this need constantly for achieving more. And, this is a tricky one for me because I feel like I'm very driven, hence the name of this podcast, ambitious podcast. And you're driven. You're driven. You have big goals and you feel like you constantly want to achieve. But achievement, I think we need to rewrite that to be achievement is not the goal. Achievement is not just a matter of I'm not done until I hit this finish line. Achievement can also be the process, right? If you think about somebody who is playing basketball since they've been 16 and every year they're getting better and better and every year they're getting to a new tier of a team. Well, if they never make it to the NBA, it doesn't mean that they're a failure. It doesn't mean that they haven't achieved anything. It just simply means that they've achieved different levels of achievement, different parts of the process. There's been different things that they've accomplished in that journey. And so I think for me, this constant need for more needs to be unpacked as to why do you want that? Why are you focusing on work over your life? Why are you focused on push, push, push versus rest and flow, right? What is that rooted in? Why do you actually want to achieve? And I think for me, I had to unpack my true desire around achievement. And, for me, a lot of what I've unpacked in therapy is the fact that my achievement in my business was very much rooted in the fact that I lost my identities. When I was a server and I became a business owner, at that time when I was a server, I had like obviously what I did, and then I would have my life outside of that. But when I became a business owner, my personal brand, I kind of became the brand. Like I kind of lost who I was, to be honest, as like a personality. And because of that, it meant that achieving in my business was me achieving personally because I didn't really have an identity outside of my business. And so I think it is important to ask yourself, like, why do we want to achieve what we want to achieve? And then also this need for perfectionism. This is something I see with so many business owners is this mindset of it's not doing it, it's doing it perfectly. For example, hitting six figures or hitting multiple six or hitting seven, it's hitting seven in the next year. I'm like, but why? Why? Like actually ask yourself that question. You want to hit this income target. You want to do this thing. Why? Why? Why does it have to be in that timeline? Is that because it is only okay if it's in that timeline? Or is it a matter of, oh, it'd be nice if it happened then, but it's not a big deal? Like this desire for perfect, we've got to release ourselves from this because it's the perfect marketing and the perfect brand and the perfect leader and the perfect this. And it's like, you're trying to excel and be perfect in every area. And let's face it, it's just not possible. We're human. We have flaws. We make mistakes. And I think perfectionism is something that gets us into this rabbit hole, constantly trying to hit a marker that's not possible. So for me, I thought perfect was hitting this certain income target by this certain amount of time. And I remember having this conversation with my coach and I was like, I got to do it. I got to do it. I got to hit this income target by this time. He's like, but why? Like, that's just a need to be perfectly in line with your goal. Like at the end of the day, if you hit it in an extra year, would it matter? And I'm like, well, no. And he's like, exactly. So it's really not necessarily because the goal needs it. It's because that would be perfect to you. So looking at perfectionism and how do you identify with perfectionism? How does that show up in your life right now? Is there an area where you feel like you're trying to be perfect and you need to be perfect in order to be validated or to be valued? Another one that I looked at was sleep. I didn't really prioritize sleep enough. Like I kind of was like, you go to sleep, you get up and like, let's call it a day, right? Like it wasn't, to me, I wasn't very invested in it. And one thing that I know now is that sleep really, if you think about how many hours in your life that you sleep in your entire lifetime, it's insane. And so your sleep is really where your body heals. Like your sleep is where you process and where your brain gets to rest, where the computer gets to kind of like turn off or, like power down in a way to get yourself to heal. And so by not sleeping, I wasn't healing. So during my most stressed out periods, it wasn't just simply a matter of, oh, okay, well, if I'm not sleeping, then like I just wasn't getting good sleep. But if you're not sleeping, you're not healing. So something that I focus on is I have a very intentional nighttime routine. It includes a bunch of different things, but for example, I have a hot bath every single night, even if it is only for like 20 minutes, half an hour. I always am in hot water before I go to bed, or a hot shower. This essentially, because you're heating up your body, the inside of, obviously there's more of a complex scientific explanation of this, but the inside of your body is going to activate the cooling mechanism inside. And that's ultimately what allows us to get to good sleep, is that your inside of your body and your internal cooling mechanism needs to be activated and turned on. So that's what happens when you go to sleep. It tries to cool down your body. So when you try to heat the external body, your internal system turns on in that process. So it kind of activates that process of cooling. So that's also one reason why I do the hot baths. They're also just great for relaxation, Epsom salts, all of that. You can also put in different salts and things to kind of calm down and soothe the body as well. So with this nighttime routine, I do the heat is number one. Number two, I also am someone who's a very big fan of CBN. So CBN is in obviously like the CBD family, but CBN is specifically for helping you to get to sleep and stay asleep. So there's no THC in it. It is simply just CBN. So really highly recommend that. It's just like an oil that I get from one of our local stores here. And then I also will do things like putting your phone in a separate room has been really helpful. I use a separate alarm clock so I don't have my phone near me when I'm sleeping. Trying to limit devices before bed, like trying to do things like reading, journaling. Really allow yourself to have device-free time before you're going to sleep. And I have this routine. And the other thing I will also say that really helped me is habit stacking. So habit stacking is essentially where you can take something that you're doing already right now for your nighttime routine, and you can add something else to it, and then add something else to it. And so what it does is it takes an existing habit and it stacks a new habit on top of it, and you pair those two together. So it's a really easy way to kind of cue your body to like, oh, we're doing this in combo now. So I would say like my nighttime routine, between all the things that I do, probably has about like a 6-7 step routine to it, between the essential oils, the sound machine, the alarm clock, the heat, all of the things. Cooling your room is also another thing that's really helpful with sleep, making sure that your room is, like, I often will sleep with the windows open intentionally to cool down the room, because it, again, helps your body to sleep. So really, like, I've just looked a lot into the science of what allows good sleep and trying to integrate as much of that as I possibly can into my routine. Now, another thing that I did find really helpful for me is tuning into a larger vision. I think when I had that moment that I told you where I kind of thought, I think I'm done. I don't know that I can do this. I think that this is it for me. The thing that helped me was tuning into the larger vision. And I remember at that time, my therapist, my coach were like, listen, this is your business. You can do what you want to do, but why'd you even start this in the first place? And the reason I started my business is because I wanted women to have the ability to have independence. I wanted people to have the ability to know that they can literally achieve anything that they want to achieve if they just put their mind to it, and if they work really hard and develop the skill sets that they need. And so for me, I had to really tune in every time that I had this like hopelessness and this doubt to like, what am I really doing here? Like, why do I really want this? And I see this with business owners all the time. They'll say like, listen, I don't know if I'm cut out for this, because they're going through a period in their business. And often, it's not about that week. It's not about that month. It's about like, well, why are you even doing this in the first place? Outside of the money, outside of the goal, outside of the fame or the followers or whatever, right? Like outside of all that shit, why do you even why do you really want this? Why do you really want this business? If this business only made you 6 figures, would you still want to do it, kind of thing? And for me, I'm like, yeah, like this is something that I'm so wildly passionate about. I can't shut up about it. Like it's just something I can't stop talking about. And so I think a lot of the time we can find it easy to kind of pull out of our business and to step back from our business. We can see an easy out of our business when we feel like things get difficult, when we're not rooted in a vision. When you have a really, really integrated vision of exactly what you're doing, why you're doing it, and the impact it's going to make on the world, you're not just giving up that week, that day, that month, that year. You're giving up on your vision. And so for me, it's been the thing that has rooted me and that I tune into every day, because I know that it's something that is going to be my baseline. It's the reason for being here. It's the reason for making this episode. It's the reason for serving my clients. It's the reason for showing up every day. It's not about recording a podcast. It's not about making a TikTok. It's about, why are we even here in the first place? What's the impact we want to have on the world? And how do we tune into that every day? And I think when you're burnt out and when you're stressed out, you're so focused on the tasks. You're so focused on, I do this, it gets this outcome. And for me, when I started to lose hope of, can I do this? Like, is this going to work? Should I do this? Like, should I call it a day? I had to get rooted in my vision to get clear on like, this is what I was meant to do. This is literally what my path was supposed to be. And I need to move forward with tuning into that vision because it's not about me and about the tasks and about the outcomes. It's about the vision and it's about the mission that we're here to achieve. Another thing that I would say was really helpful for me in coming out of burnout was getting still. In today's day and age, we are just so bombarded with social media, emails, Slack notifications, Voxer notifications, like you name it. There's things coming in left, right, and center of alerts to us. And I think something that we miss is we miss silence. Like I think there's so much discovery that can be found in just having silence and just genuinely taking space away from the noise. And you don't need to go on vacation to do this. This is the other thing as well, is I've been doing device free after certain hours, trying to put my phone away and not have it anywhere near me. I've been doing device free days on the weekends. I've significantly decreased the amount of TV, Netflix, all of that I watch because I realized like it was just simply a numbing mechanism. It was just a distraction from being present. And I'm like, I want to go really be in tune with myself. And so for me, I take free device time in the mornings, evenings, days on the weekend. Like I really feel silence is the way to discover the message that's trying to come through. And so I oftentimes in my peak of burnout would have spots of silence and I would have literally like a breakdown. I would physically just like emotionally be like distraught during these moments of silence. And that was because I wasn't allowing my body to process. I was distracting by watching Netflix. I was distracting by constantly being on my phone or watching TikTok. My dopamine receptors were constantly like, okay, like filling it up with constant ping, 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 ping of all of these different, my dopamine getting hit. And I think to just take a second to step back, to get space, to appreciate silence has been one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is like, we need to pull away from these constant notifications and just like you and a journal or you on a walk without your headphones. Listen to the birds, like listen to your breath, listen to the cars that are passing, right? The sun on your face, the wind that hits your chest. Like those moments, I remember I went to a retreat recently and I was sitting there and I saw this duck pass by. And this might sound weird as I'm saying this to some people, so bear with me. But I was sitting there and I was feeling the sun on me and the fresh air and the waves were moving and the birds are chirping. And then this duck starts to float by. And this was like in the cottage in the middle of nowhere. And I just remember like literally coming to tears. And I was like, I'm just so present right now. I'm just so present. I know that this was happening around me, but I was on my phone. I know this was happening around me, but I was distracted by TV or having my laptop out or whatever it was. It's like there's so much to enjoy around you. So try to embrace stillness. If you're someone who's struggling right now, you may have something that's trying to come through that you're distracting by having other devices or things around you. So try to actually get still. Try to be intentional. Do some things like meditation. Try to get still if you can. Power of routine was another thing. So again, I really am super intentional about the balance of my calendar now. So for example, I have certain times where I wake up and I have specific times that I go to bed and I have specific times that I'm social and I have specific times where I'm like not available. Previous me, someone wanted to get together on like a Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday. I'm like, whatever day, let's get together. I am very strict about when I do social now and when I don't because I have a rhythm. I have values that I make my decisions by, as we were talking about earlier, and I really am focused on the rhythm of my week. And again, harmony. I don't want these constant fluctuations. I want an overall baseline of where I'm operating from. And so I really am intentional about my routine. So I would say like routine is also when you're really stressed, the thing that your mind goes back to. So when you think about brushing your teeth, you don't think about the steps that are involved in brushing your teeth. Your brain just goes, your mind just knows. So you can do the same thing. When you're stressed, your routines, your habits are the number one thing that you're going to fall back on. So whatever your habits and routines are, that's going to be the baseline for which you operate. So for me, I'm now ingraining my routine into me, into my schedule, into my lifestyle, and making this like a rinse and repeat thing because it allows me to be more productive. It allows me to make all my values happen in one week, and it allows me to achieve harmony. The other thing as well that I think, is difficult for business owners, and it was a hard lesson for me, but I do it and I've learned it, is that as a business owner, you're in control. I think so many people will feel this kind of like external whatever. They have this external pressure of, I have to hit X amount by this time, or I have to launch this offer, and I have to make this sale, and I have to bring on this team member. And I'm like, you don't have to do anything. Like, you're in control. This is your business. This is your vision. These are your values. So if you need something as a CEO, you decide. And for us, I was feeling so much pressure because I had set out all of these things that I wanted to do and like this whole quarterly plan for our year right after, like, as I said, I was off at Christmas. So as of January 1, this whole plan would have gone into effect. And I remember I was so upset because I was like, I just mapped all of this out and it means I have to push this and I have to push that and I have to push this. And I'm like, I remember my coach being like, but it's your business and you're in control. Do you control your business or does it control you? And I was like, facts. So I stepped back and I was like, okay, like push the date, move the launch date of this, nix that offer we were going to do. Like, I just had to make tough calls and I streamlined the business. I literally was looking at, what are things that I think I have to do versus me just deciding I want to do them? They're very, very different things. So to me, I'm constantly now looking at things that, do I have to do this, or is it a self-imposed expectation? Is this like, I need to get this client their recording or something, or their contracts? Like, okay, great. Then that's something I need to do because like they're an existing client. Of course I need to do that. But when it comes to things like, oh, I want to, if you say to yourself, I want to launch a new offer, I want to launch a podcast, I want to launch a YouTube channel, I want to start going on TikTok. It's like, well, if you're not doing that right now and you don't have the capacity to do it, that's a self-imposed expectation that doesn't have to be done. You're just saying that it needs to be done. You're just saying that that's essential. It's not essential. It's just more a matter of you're imposing that it is. So really look and see, when you are someone who feels like, my business is just like, I'm so overwhelmed, I'm feeling so much pressure, you're in the driver's seat. You control your business. Your business does not control you. At any moment, you can make a decision and decide that you want to do things differently. It's not easy, but you can make that decision. So if you are someone who's feeling pressure from your business, take a step back and say, what is the business needing, in the sense of what is it required to keep the lights on, versus what are things that I am putting as an expectation on myself that are not necessary, but my own created expectation. Journaling, I just can't stress enough the impact of journaling. I don't think nearly enough people journal. I don't think people are intentional about journaling. And journaling to me is literally using a pen and paper to get your brain out. You need to get your brain onto paper and you need to try to let your subconscious to just empty. One of the things that I did during this time is I did fear journaling. So it's essentially where you have a journal or a notebook where that's specifically designed to be a place for negative emotions. It's not a place where you're going to be writing affirmations. It's not a place where you're goal setting. It's none of that. It is literally a place for you to get all the negative emotions that are happening in your body out. And the most important thing here is that you're not judging those. You don't write, this and this and say, I remember one of the first times I did it, I was like, oh my God, am I depressed? Because I would look at this journal. It was very dark at the time, right? I was really struggling and it was really dark. And I would just think, oh my gosh, like, what does this mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's just your feelings. It's just your thoughts that are fluid and passing. So the other thing that I want to give to you is an acronym that my therapist gave to me, which was immensely helpful, is the acronym of HUMP. So when you're doing the fear journaling, this is something to keep in mind, that all of your feelings and your thoughts that you're having in a moment. So H is harmless, U is useless, M is meaningless, and P is passing. So these feelings you're having are harmless, useless, meaningless, and passing. My therapist gave me that, and it was like this words of wisdom that now when I have these emotions that are really intense, and I would have these moments of feeling intense, either sadness or irritation or any of that during my peak of burnout, I had to remember that this is just a feeling. It's harmless, it's useless, it's meaningless, and it's going to pass. It doesn't mean anything about you. It will come, it will go. It serves no purpose, and it's not going to harm you. It's just a feeling. It doesn't mean it's enjoyable, but it's just a feeling. So it will pass. So I would say journaling and using a fear journal has also helped me to really get all of the thoughts that I had in my mind out, and was like so helpful for me. And I think more than anything, the body, like a lot of the time they'll say, if you want to change your mind, you start with the body, because the body can send signals to the brain to say, hey, like we're moving, we're feeling endorphins here, we're getting things moving, right? So they'll often say, change the state of your body if you want to change your state of your mind. So for me, yes, this has been nutrition. I'm very conscious about what I eat now. I'm very intentional about how certain foods make me feel. How do I feel when I eat sugar? How do I feel when I drink alcohol? How do I feel when I have too much caffeine, right? Like, how do I keep my body again in harmony? And also, this is seen in things like exercise. One of the things that I'm super into right now is hot yoga. I've been finding it makes me feel amazing. And before that, it was going on walks was my big thing. So, and then before that, it was the gym. So I just like say, find something that helps you to really get into movement and to change the state each day. And then another thing that I feel like was definitely a connection between the, brain body connection was ice baths. Ice baths, I can't preach enough. Like, I know some people think I'm crazy that I do those, but I love them. I am truly obsessed with how I feel after going into an ice bath. And the amount of dopamine that an ice bath experience can increase in your body is insane. So tune into the body. Sometimes to change the mind, you also can just shift the state in the body and it will communicate. The two sides will communicate. So I hope today was helpful for you in kind of going through, and looking at the impact of burnout. I wanted to normalize the fact that this is not just a you thing, okay? This is something that I've experienced. I have a lot of scenarios that this has happened in different ways it's presented, but because of that, I felt that this is something we need to talk about. It's not just about we're crushing it in this area and we're crushing it in that area in a business. And like, yes, we do that, but sometimes we lose the light in the way, right? We lose the light in the process of getting there. And I think this is something, while burnout is very common, it is not normal. And what I mean by that is, like, many people experience this, but it doesn't have to maintain, it doesn't have to stay. And I really want to encourage you to take inventory after today. Ask yourself, how are my routines? Am I making decisions from values? Am I intentional about how I'm living my life right now? Do I feel like I have harmony, right? Do I feel like I have one of the stages of burnout that I'm in right now, right? What stage were you? Are any of the signs that I mentioned of burnout something that you really resonate with? If so, this can be your sign to do something differently. And all it takes is that decision that you're going to choose to move forward and not live this way anymore. And now, being on the other side of this, I have a very different life than I did before. I have a very different schedule than I did before, very different energy, very different mental health, very different physical health. Everything is shifting. And so I want to tell you, as someone who has come from who's on the other side of all of this now, this is possible for you. You can have harmony. You can have a thriving business and a thriving life and mental health and physical health. But it takes work. It takes intention. You need to actually have a goal of how you're going to get there and a plan to do so. This is no different than your business. You need to make sure that both you and your business both have goals and you're checking in on those goals consistently. I know we covered a lot today, but I really hope that this is something that you can come back to. Listen back to this and take some notes on this and say to yourself, okay, great. I want to take this and move forward and really make sure that not only am I dealing with my current stress, but I'm also preventing stress for the future. All that being said, we will see you on the next episode. And as always, stay ambitious.